Welcome to a special bonus edition of the Monocle Daily on Monocle Radio, brought to you in association with the University of Warwick. For 60 years, the University of Warwick has been championing curiosity, collaboration, and the transformational power of knowledge. As a global hub for research and discovery, the British institution tackles the world's pressing challenges with clarity and purpose. Now, Monocle invited its readers to pose the big questions that they wanted answering. In this special programme, the University of Warwick's renowned academics offer insight on topics shaping the world today, making sense of everything from artificial intelligence to the economics of luxury. Today, we're talking economics. One Monocle reader posed a question to Professor of Economics Caroline Elliott. They asked, why are luxury consumers attracted to exclusivity? Here's what she had to say to Monocle's Mitch Parker.
When we think about luxury goods, it's partly about scarcity. But there are a number of additional key factors that luxury brands will always need to be thinking about. So crucially, brands need to be thinking about the quality of their product. They also need to be thinking about the durability of their product. That's important because people are investing in these products, but it's increasingly important as well because we see the interest in second-hand markets for these products at the moment as well. These top-end buyers are not just thinking about buying a single bag, but they might be interested in buying a brand of bag in different styles, different colours, different leathers. So scarcity is important, but also important is the quality of the product and the customer service to a repeat purchaser to try and draw in buyers so that they will be brand loyal.
Now I'm kind of weirdly thinking about art prints, for example, where they're like only one of 20 made or something like that, which just feels like people kind of creating scarcity a little bit, or a limited release product where there's not going to be that many available. It happens a lot in the sneaker market, which is an area that I used to work in. But it was interesting to see kind of like the idea of consumers wanting something more because there are less of it. What is that driver and its relationship to the economics of luxury?
When consumers are thinking about purchasing luxury items, they're always going to be thinking to some extent about the exclusivity of the products. So there's a famous Groucho Marx quotation about not wanting to be a member of any club that would have him as a member. And so these potential buyers, they like this idea of exclusivity. And I think they like what it signals about them as well, that they have that level, yes, of money, but also of social standing, that they can somehow get through the barriers to purchase these very limited supply items.
Does that sometimes backfire for brands, though, when they're kind of looking at making things too scarce? Do they kind of risk alienating customers by making things too exclusive? Or is that kind of, they've got their customers at that top end, so it doesn't matter?
I think the question of whether brands can potentially damage their reputation by making items too scarce is not a particular concern that we've seen. So when we think about this classic example of the Hermès handbag, the brand is renowned for the scarcity of its handbags. It's not done any damage as far as I can tell. I think instead there's much greater worry that a luxury brand will be very successful and then be tempted to reduce the exclusivity of its product. Sometimes we see examples of brands where they've reduced their exclusivity and it's backfired. And I think brands have learned from that. So I think this idea that there can be waiting lists for products, that sometimes it's hard to get on the waiting lists themselves. And not just that, but even now when we think about the flagship stores, often there'll be queuing policies to get in the stores. As of yet, I don't think this has been damaging to the brands. It's only helped create the image of exclusivity, such that we see people queuing outside flagship stores regularly.
I kind of wouldn't mind taking a step back, if you don't mind, just a little bit. Thinking about luxury and economics, I was kind of curious about how big is the luxury end of the economy in the wider economy. Like, we know LVMH is one of the largest companies in the world. They do like $1 billion worth of business. Like, how much of a luxury market is there? Is the luxury economy growing?
Typically, we would expect that when economies are doing better, as with individuals, when they're feeling that they have greater disposable income, we will tend to see luxury brands doing better because more people will have confidence in their own finances, so they'll be willing to spend more money on these luxury good purchases. What we see is that when economies aren't doing so well, or when there's less confidence and more pessimism about the state of the market, then we will tend to see that consumers will rein in their purchases of luxury goods.
Is that an urban legend about lipstick sales being a recession indicator or something like that? Is that true? Or can you tell me a little bit about that, where people say, like, maybe you can't go and afford to buy the handbag anymore, but you'll treat yourself to the lipstick when times are a little bit tough?
There is a lipstick effect. It's well documented in the economics literature. And yes, it is true that when consumers have more pessimism about the state of the economy and their finances, but they want to treat themselves, then there is evidence that they will treat themselves with a small luxury purchase, such as a lipstick from a top-end brand. And I think this leads us to think about the very successful strategy that a lot of luxury brands have adopted, that they've expanded from their primary business into additional sectors of the economy so that they can reach a broader set of consumers. And so we do see that top-end luxury fashion brands, maybe couture is their principal business, their primary business, but they've expanded into toiletries, they've expanded into sunglasses, etc. Partly that will be about trying to make their brands more recession-proof, so that they hope that those smaller luxury purchases will continue even in recessions, even when people are nervous about the state of the economy. But I think that this strategy is also very successful because it's partly about recession-proofing these brands, but it's also about reaching out to the next generations of buyers. So it may be that a 16-year-old can't afford a Chanel handbag, but they can ask for their first Chanel lipstick, or they may ask for a pair of Louis Vuitton sunglasses in the hope that in the future they'll be able to afford the handbag.
That's an entry pathway to the brand.
Exactly.
We talked a little bit before about luxury signifiers. Are there industries beyond the kind of fashion realm that we're seeing take on these luxury signifiers in industries that you wouldn't expect? Like, I think luxury, my first thought is kind of like fashion and cosmetics and then probably hotels. But are there other industries that are kind of taking these signifiers from the luxury playbook and applying them in places that people might not expect?
We do often think about fashion brands. We often think about cars as well. We think about jewelry. There's a very lovely recent example of a sale of a luxury good. A Stradivarius violin was sold at auction, I think, for around $11 million. I think this is a really nice example of a luxury good because it demonstrates that, yes, a luxury good is one that is very scarce. And in terms of Stradivarius violins, they've not been made for hundreds of years. So there is very definitely a very limited supply of them. But what we see about Stradivarius violins and the ongoing success is that it's also the quality of the product that's very important. And therefore, the violin that was sold by Sotheby's, and they were very careful to show the instruments in multiple countries at Sotheby's, but the potential buyers would be given the opportunity to view and to try the violin, but it was very limited, the number of people who could try that instrument. I think we see those same principles about scarcity, ultimate quality of the product, but reaching out to a select number of potential buyers in advance. We see it, yes, in violins in the same way that we see it in terms of cars and handbags.
That was Caroline Elliott. To hear more from the University of Warwick's renowned team, check out the other episodes in this series at the Monocle Daily page at monocle.com. And do discover more about the University of Warwick at warwick.ac.uk. This was a special edition of the Monocle Daily, brought to you in association with the University of Warwick, the place for life's big questions.